Long before the known empires of men carved their names upon stone, there was a world that breathed beneath the sea, an empire lost to both time and tide. Its name was Elendora, the city of eternal dawn, a place of golden towers, living crystals, and beings who spoke with the stars. It was said that Elendora was not built by mortals but dreamed into being by the gods themselves, shaped from the breath of creation and guarded by a magic older than light. Yet with every dawn comes a shadow, and Elendora's brilliance concealed a secret so dark that even the gods feared to speak of it. Beneath the marble sanctuaries and endless halls of music, a forbidden order of seers practiced the art of the abyss, a black magic drawn from the void beyond existence. They called it Nethra, the mirror between worlds. With it, they could alter destiny, summon souls from other realms, and even bend time itself. But such power demanded sacrifice of blood, of memory, of soul. And when the final offering was made, Elendora's sun fell forever. Centuries later, when the ocean swallowed her glory, the myths remained. Sailors spoke of shimmering lights beneath the waves, of whispers that promised immortality to those who dared descend. None returned until now. Now begins the story of Aryan Vale, a wanderer haunted by dreams of a city that should not exist, and Lysera, the last heir of Elendora's bloodline, cursed to remember what the world has forgotten. The night it began, the ocean was too quiet. The waves moved like the breath of something sleeping beneath the surface, slow and deliberate, as if the sea itself waited for someone to listen. Aryan Vale sat at the edge of a worn pier in the small coastal town of Mira's End, his boots half buried in sand and salt. He had been having the same dream for 30 nights straight, of a city made of glass and light, where the sea sang in a forgotten tongue and the moon wept gold into the water. Each time he would wake with the taste of salt and iron in his mouth, his heart racing as though he had drowned and risen again. He was not a sailor by birth. He was a scholar of old myths, a wanderer who sought patterns between legend and truth. His travels had taken him from ruined temples in the deserts of Ashara to the frozen cliffs of Thorn, chasing whispers of a vanished civilization that predated all others. Yet now every parchment and symbol pointed him back here, to the ocean that had no name, to the depths where Elendora was said to sleep. The people of Mira's End avoided him. They said he spoke too often of things best forgotten, that his eyes carried the reflection of storms not yet born. But the sea called to him still, stronger with each passing night. And on this 30th evening, as the tide rose under a blood-colored moon, something finally answered. A shimmer appeared far from shore, a column of light breaking through the mist. At first, Aryan thought it was a trick of the moon until the light began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. The dream's melody filled his mind again, that haunting hum that sounded like both prayer and warning. He stood, heart pounding, and without thinking stepped into the surf. The water was cold, too cold for a midsummer night. Each wave that touched him whispered fragments of words he couldn't understand. He walked until the water reached his chest, until the world blurred into darkness and sound. And then, something brushed his hand. Smooth. Alive. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the sea. He stood upon a vast marble causeway, stretching endlessly into the horizon. Above him, a black sky filled with unfamiliar constellations shimmered with faint, shifting colors. Towers of translucent crystal rose on either side, glowing faintly as though remembering sunlight. The air carried the scent of jasmine and ashes. It was the city from his dreams, Elendora, the city of eternal dawn. But it was not dead. It breathed. At the end of the causeway stood a woman. She was cloaked in silver silk, her hair dark as the void, her eyes burning like twin moons caught in water. She spoke without moving her lips. "You heard the sea," she said. "Few still can." Aryan tried to answer, but his voice came out as a whisper of air. "Are you real?" Her gaze held his. "Real enough to remember you. We have waited too long for the one who dreams of us." He took a step closer, and the marble beneath his boots rippled like liquid. "Who are you?" "I am Lysera," she said, "last of the Sunborn, and heir to a curse that even the gods fled from." The name struck something deep in Aryan's memory. Lysera the Keeper, the mythic guardian of Elendora's heartstone, the crystal said to contain the soul of the city. Every chronicle he'd studied ended with her vanishing as the city sank. Yet here she stood, ageless and sorrowful, as though time had never touched her. "Why am I here?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because you are chosen," she said softly. "Because the sea remembers your blood as it remembered mine." Before he could speak again, the ground trembled. From the dark horizon, a sound rose, a low, guttural roar that made the crystal towers hum with fear. The air thickened, shadows twisting in the distance. Lysra turned sharply, her calm breaking for the first time. "They've found us," she whispered. A wind surged down the causeway, carrying whispers that were not wind. Figures began to take form, shapeless at first, then growing clearer. Tall silhouettes wrapped in shadow, their eyes burning with blue fire. The Abyssal Watchers. Arian had read of them once, guardians of the forbidden magic, the ones who had dragged Elendora into the deep when the gods turned away. "Stay behind me," Lysra commanded. She raised her hand, and a symbol of light appeared in her palm, spinning like a living star. The Watchers halted, the air vibrating with their fury. But then, one spoke. Its voice sounded like cracking stone. "You cannot defy the vow, daughter of dawn. The mirror must awaken." Arian felt something move within him, a pressure, ancient and alive. A faint mark burned to life on his wrist, glowing with the same color as Lysra's sigil. She turned to him, eyes wide. "It's begun," she said, almost in fear. "The mirror has chosen you." The Watchers lunged. Lysra struck her hand to the ground, and light exploded in a wave that shattered the causeway beneath them. The world folded inward. Sound, light, water. Everything collapsed into a spiral of gold and darkness. Then Arian was falling. He gasped awake, choking on seawater, lying once again on the pier of Mirror's End. The dawn was breaking. A pale, trembling light across the horizon, but something glimmered in his hand. A shard of crystal, smooth and pulsing faintly, as if alive. He turned it in his palm and saw the reflection of a woman, Lysra, watching him through the glass, her lips moving soundlessly. And though no voice came, he understood the words perfectly. "Find the Heartstone before the mirror wakes, or the sea will claim us all." The waves roared then, louder than before, and for the first time Arian realized the ocean was not calling to him. It was warning him. The morning after the dream, the ocean lay still as glass and the air was heavy with silence. Arian sat in his small room above the dockside inn, the crystal shard clutched tightly in his hand. It pulsed faintly, a living heartbeat against his skin. Every few moments it flickered with that same pale light he had seen in Elendora's towers, a rhythm both alien and familiar. He hadn't slept. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Lysra's face, her warning, and the dark figures with eyes of blue fire. He spent the early hours poring over his notes, scrolls filled with myths, maps and fragments of forgotten languages. Everything pointed to the same legend, the mirror between worlds. According to the few surviving records, it was not merely an artifact but a living portal, a gateway between creation and the void. The ancients believed it could reflect the soul of any who gazed upon it, showing them the truth they feared most. Some claimed it could even rewrite reality itself, but every use of the mirror demanded an offering. The greater the wish, the greater the cost. If Lysra was real, and he no longer doubted that she was, then Elendora's fall had not been the result of war or storm. It had been the price of their ambition. He rose and went to the window. Outside, the tide had receded unusually far, exposing black rocks that were rarely visible. At their edge, something shimmered faintly, an arch of stone half buried in sand. It was shaped like an open eye. The sight chilled him. The mark on his wrist burned faintly in response. He packed what little he owned, a lantern, a journal, a compass that no longer worked, and the shard of crystal. As he stepped outside, the innkeeper, a woman of 70 winters with a face carved by the wind, watched him with a look of quiet fear. "You shouldn't go down there," she said, voice trembling. "The sea keeps what it takes." Arian hesitated. "Do you know what that place is?" She crossed herself with shaking fingers. "A temple, older than the ocean. My grandfather said it rises only when the sea remembers the dead." He nodded once and left. The beach was silent except for the distant cry of gulls. The archway loomed ahead, Ancient stone slick with seaweed and runes eroded by centuries. As he drew closer, he noticed symbols carved along the base, spirals and lines intersecting in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. He brushed the sand away, revealing words in a language he somehow understood. Only those who dream of the dawn may walk into the dark. The crystal shard in his palm began to glow. The stone archway responded, the air vibrating with a low hum. A thin film of light filled the opening, rippling like the surface of a pond. Arian took a deep breath, whispered a silent prayer to gods long dead, and stepped through. The world twisted. For a moment there was no air, no sound, only weightless descent through cold water. Then his feet struck solid ground. He stood in a vast chamber beneath the ocean, lit by threads of blue light running through the walls. Statues of forgotten gods lined the hall, beings with serpent eyes, wings of coral, and faces half human, half divine. In the center stood a massive door of black glass, its surface reflecting not the room but endless stars. A voice echoed softly behind him. "You shouldn't have come alone." Arian turned sharply. Lysera stood there, her silver robes rippling as if moved by unseen tides. Her presence carried both warmth and sorrow, like moonlight trapped in water. "I didn't come by choice," he said. "The sea brought me." "The sea remembers blood," she murmured. "It remembers every vow broken beneath its gaze." She moved closer, her hand brushing the air near the shard in his grasp. "You found a fragment of the Heartstone. It will guide you, but it also binds you. The mirror has marked you as part of the vow." "What vow?" She looked toward the black glass door. "The one that doomed us." The mirror was meant to protect Elendora, to seal away the chaos beyond the stars. But one among us tried to use it to ascend beyond the gods. The ritual tore our world apart. I tried to stop him, but... Her voice faltered. "The city fell, and I was bound to its memory. Until you came." Arian felt a chill pass through him. "Who was he?" "His name was Kalis. My brother." The name echoed like a thunderclap through the chamber. Lysera's eyes shimmered with pain. "He believed that through the mirror he could become eternal," she continued. "But eternity without balance breeds corruption. The Watchers were born from his shadow. They roam still, guarding the mirror, feeding on the echoes of our past." Arian approached the black door. Its surface pulsed faintly, as though something on the other side breathed in rhythm with him. "And this?" "The Temple of Reflection," she said. "The first gate to the abyss." The words had barely left her lips when the ground trembled. Cracks spread across the floor, spilling water that rose with unnatural speed. The blue threads of light along the walls flickered and died. Lysera's expression turned sharp. "They've found us again." From the corners of the chamber, shadows seeped like smoke, forming twisted silhouettes. The Watchers emerged, 5 this time, their bodies taller, their eyes burning brighter. Lysera extended her hand, summoning a circle of light around them. "Arian, the shard. Place it in the center." He obeyed instinctively, setting the crystal into a small depression at his feet. It sank into the stone with a soft hum. The floor symbols ignited, and the water froze mid-motion, forming a sphere of suspended droplets around them. The Watchers halted at the edge of the light, their shapes flickering like dying flame. One spoke, its voice a chorus of echoes. "The mirror awakens, daughter of dawn. The mortal carries the seed of the curse." Arian felt the mark on his wrist burn fiercely. He stumbled, gasping, as images flooded his mind. A flash of a colossal mirror rising from the sea, a figure crowned in light, and a voice whispering from the dark. "You are the bridge." Lysera grasped his shoulders, her face close to his. "You're connected to it now. The mirror is calling you. But if it awakens before we find the Heartstone, it will unmake everything." The sphere of frozen water began to crack, the Watchers pressing against the light barrier. Lysera turned toward the far wall, tracing a circle in the air. A doorway of gold opened, swirling with mist. "This way!" she shouted. They leapt through as the chamber collapsed, the sound of roaring water chasing them into the unknown. When Arian looked back, the temple was gone. Only the echo of the sea remained, and the knowledge that somewhere beneath the waves the mirror was stirring once more. The light they fell through had no warmth, only pressure, a sense of being folded through time. When Arian's vision steadied, he found himself standing in a cavern of pale stone. Threads of light ran through the ceiling like veins. Water dripped in perfect rhythm, echoing in the vast hollow. Lysera knelt, pressing her palm to the ground. The marks that shimmered under her skin pulsed faintly, answering the glow in the rock. "We are in the lower sanctum," she murmured. "The heart of Elendora's foundations, the place where the first Sunborn were created." Arian still felt the tremor of the Watcher's presence fading behind them. His breath came shallow. The air here was dense with something ancient, power that felt both divine and corrupted. "Sunborn?" he asked. Lysera's eyes softened. Before men learned speech, the gods wove beings of light to tend the earth. They were made of memory and flame, half spirit, half flesh. We called ourselves Sunborn, for the light of creation burned in us. But that light became pride. She looked toward a cracked mural along the wall. It depicted tall figures with halos of fire standing before a dark mirror. Their hands reached toward it in worship. Beneath them, smaller figures, humans, bowed in fear. When Kalis touched the mirror, his soul was split, she said quietly. Half remained in his body, half merged with the void. From that wound came the Watchers. From his envy came the curse. And when the city fell, our bloodline was scattered into the world above. Arian stared at the mural. "You think my blood is—" "I know it is," Lysera interrupted gently. She gestured to the mark on his wrist. "That symbol appears only to the descendants of Elendora's priest line, the keepers of the Heartstone. The sea chose you because it remembers its own." Arian looked down at his hand, the faint golden mark still glowing through his skin. "I'm no god's heir," he whispered. "Nor am I," she said. "But your blood remembers even if you do not." She moved to the far end of the cavern where a circle of steps descended into darkness. The air grew colder as they walked, the light from the ceiling fading until only the shard's glow remained. At the bottom lay a pool of still water. Its surface reflected not their faces but a sky filled with burning stars. Lysera knelt beside it, dipping her fingers into the pool. "This is the memory well. Every drop here holds a fragment of Elendora's past. It will show us what the sea wants us to see." Arian hesitated. "And if we don't like what it shows?" "Truth cares little for liking." She touched the shard to the water. The pool flared white, then went utterly black. Images formed, shifting, fluid, alive. He saw Elendora in its glory, towers of crystal reaching into the heavens, streets filled with music, rivers of light flowing through gardens that never died. He saw Lysera standing beside a younger man with eyes of gold, Kalis. They stood before the mirror, its surface swirling like smoke. Kalis placed his hand upon it and the mirror rippled outward, forming shapes, wings, shadows, faces screaming silently. Lysera tried to pull him back, but light burst from the mirror, engulfing them both. When it faded, Kalis's eyes were no longer gold but void black. The vision twisted again. Elendora was breaking apart, temples crumbling, the ocean swallowing towers as lightning tore the sky. Lysera fell to her knees beside the Heartstone, placing her hands upon it. "Bind the curse to me," she whispered. "Let the city sleep until the sea forgets," and then darkness, the pool's glow died. Arian staggered backward, chest tight. You gave up everything." Lysera looked at him, a ghost of pain in her eyes. It was the only way to keep the mirror from consuming the world. But the curse did not end, it merely waited. "Now it wakes through you." Arian wanted to speak, but something moved in the water. A shadow, small at first, then growing larger. The reflection of the stars faded. A face emerged, Kalis. Not in memory, but alive. "Little sister." The voice came low and cold. "You cannot hide the air from me forever." Lysera's hand shot out, forming a sigil of light. "Leave him." Kalis laughed, the sound echoing like thunder. "He carries my blood too." "Did you not see it in the pool?" Arian froze. "Well, what?" Lysera's expression collapsed. "No," she whispered. Kalis smiled within the water, his eyes glinting. "You sealed me once, but the seal was written in the blood of two lines, yours and mine. The child of both will awaken the mirror completely. Tell me, mortal, did you never wonder why the sea dreamed of you?" The pool shattered into a storm of black mist. Lysera pulled Arian backward as the air split with light. A surge of pressure threw them to the ground. When the mist cleared, Kalis's face was gone, but his voice lingered. "The tides rise, sister. The dawn you guard will drown." Silence returned, broken only by the slow dripping of water. Arian sat trembling, the mark on his wrist now burning crimson instead of gold. "He said I carry his blood." Lysera's face was pale, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It seems the gods weave cruel patterns. Your ancestors must have been born from both houses, the pure and the fallen. That's why the sea called you. You are the bridge between the light and the abyss. He clenched his fists. Then tell me how to end it. She looked toward the far wall where faint carvings formed a map of constellations. To find the Heartstone, we must reach the Spire of Dawn, the city's highest point now buried beneath the ocean's deepest trench. But to go there, we need breath where no air exists. And for that, we must awaken the first flame. What is that? A relic older than the gods, she whispered. A fire that burns underwater, guarded by the creatures who remember the first fall. If we can claim it, the path to the spire will open. Arian rose, determination overtaking fear. Then we find it. Lysera met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Understand this, if Kylus speaks truth, the mirror may not destroy you. It may need you to be reborn. Every step closer to the Heartstone will also bring you closer to him. I'll risk it, he said. If I'm the bridge, then let me choose which side it leads to. She gave a faint, weary smile, spoken like one of the Sunborn. They began their ascent from the cavern, following the glowing veins of stone. Behind them, the pool lay silent once more, but beneath its dark surface, two faint eyes gleamed, watching, waiting, and far below, in the abyss where light could not reach, something vast began to stir, the first heartbeat of the mirror itself. The descent began at dusk when the world above was fading into violet silence. Lysera led the way along a cliff of obsidian that plunged endlessly into the sea's throat. The air trembled with the pulse of the deep, slow, ancient, and alive. The further they went, the dimmer the sky became, until the last thread of sunlight vanished entirely. Arian followed, his breath shallow inside the thin veil of air Lysera had conjured around them. It shimmered faintly like glass, keeping the crushing weight of the sea at bay. He could feel the pressure of the ocean pressing in, an invisible hand testing their resolve. The shard of crystal, his link to the Heartstone, hung around his neck now, pulsing softly like a heartbeat in rhythm with his own. The first flame lies beneath the trench of veils, Lysera said as they moved deeper. Her voice sounded strange here, distant and echoing as though spoken from both near and far. It is the oldest thing the world remembers. The gods called it Erythra, the breath of beginnings. When Elendora fell, the sea claimed it to keep it from my brother's hands. Arian glanced down into the darkness below them. And we're sure it's still there? If it is not, she said quietly, then the world has already begun to end. They continued downward. The light from the surface faded into black. Strange shapes drifted past in the dark. Ghostly fish with eyes like tiny suns, serpentine shadows moving in slow grace. The silence was immense. Even their thoughts seemed swallowed by it. After what felt like hours, they reached the trench floor, a vast plain of stone, carved with symbols that glowed faintly red. It looked less like seabed and more like the skin of some ancient creature. In the distance stood an archway formed of coral and bone, and beyond it a dull crimson light pulsed steadily. Lysera stopped, her eyes narrowing. It's awake, she whispered. Something has stirred the flame. They moved closer. The light grew stronger, revealing the shape of an enormous chamber, a hollow dome made of translucent crystal, its walls breathing with soft luminescence. At the center floated the flame. It was not fire as Arian knew it, but a sphere of molten gold and red, suspended within the water like a living heart. The light it cast made everything shimmer, and yet its beauty carried the weight of sorrow. But they were not alone. As they stepped into the dome, the water thickened with motion. Figures emerged from the edges, tall, spectral beings draped in kelp and coral, their faces hidden beneath masks of pearl. Their eyes burned with a dull crimson glow. They moved without sound, their presence heavy as stone. Lysera whispered, "The guardians of Erythra. The first soul sacrificed when the sea took the flame, they protect it still." Arian instinctively reached for the shard at his neck, but Lysera caught his wrist. No sudden movement. They do not see with eyes, but with memory. If they sense fear or deceit, they will strike. They walked slowly toward the heart of the chamber. The guardians watched but did not move. The flame pulsed brighter, reacting to Arian's presence. The mark on his wrist burned faintly through the barrier of his skin. Then one of the guardians stepped forward. Its mask was cracked down the center, revealing the suggestion of a face beneath, human but ancient, its features blurred by centuries of the deep. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a chorus of whispers carried through water. "Child of both dawn and abyss," it said, "why do you seek the flame that sleeps beneath the sea?" Arion hesitated, but Lysera bowed her head. "He seeks it to reach the spire, to find the heartstone before the mirror wakes." The guardian tilted its head. "And if the heartstone no longer wishes to be found?" Lysera looked up sharply. "The world dies without it." A silence followed, long and oppressive. The flame dimmed slightly as though listening. Finally, the guardian spoke again. "To take the flame is to awaken its pain. It remembers betrayal. It remembers Kalis." The name echoed through the chamber like a wound reopening. The water stirred violently, swirling in currents that lashed against the crystal walls. Lysera stepped back, summoning a sphere of light around them. From the shadows near the flame, something began to rise, a vast shape, dark and radiant. It unfolded like wings made of smoke and molten gold. A voice rumbled through the chamber, deep and mournful. "You dare return, daughter of dawn?" Lysera's expression hardened. "I return not as a thief, but as a keeper. The world above is breaking. Let us take what we need." The shape solidified into a colossal being, part dragon, part serpent. Its eyes twin suns burning behind a mask of shifting flame. The guardian bowed before it. "The keeper of Erythra," Lysera whispered. "One of the first ones." The creature's gaze fell upon Arion. "And you," it said, "carry the taint of Kalis. His blood burns in you still. Why should I not reduce you to ash where you stand?" Arion's pulse roared in his ears. He felt the mark on his wrist blaze, heat spreading through his arm. "Because his blood may be what saves us," he said, the words escaping him before thought could stop them. The creature studied him, the light of its body flickering. "Speak, mortal." "I didn't ask for his blood," Arion said, voice trembling. "But I won't let it be used to destroy the world. If I carry both light and shadow, then I'll decide what they become." For a long moment the being said nothing. Then slowly the molten fire of its body dimmed to a soft glow. "Courage," it said, "or folly. The sea does not care which." It lowered its massive head until its gaze filled the water around them. "If you would take the flame, you must bind yourself to its memory. You will bear its pain. You will see what it has seen." Before Arion could respond, the creature exhaled. Fire, liquid and living, surged from its mouth, wrapping around him. He gasped, unable to scream, as the world turned to light. He saw visions. The birth of the ocean, the gods shaping stars, Elendora's towers gleaming under eternal dawn. Then the fall, the mirror cracking, Kalis reaching into the void, Lysera's tears burning as the sea consumed the city, and beneath it all the flame screaming, consumed, forgotten, bound. When the light faded, Arion collapsed. His body burned with energy, but the water around him no longer pressed upon his chest. He could breathe in the deep. The mark on his wrist had changed. No longer gold or crimson, but a molten blend of both. The great creature's voice echoed again. "You are now the bearer of the first flame. Go before it consumes you as it consumed the gods." Lysera caught Arion's arm, guiding him upward. The guardians parted silently as they passed. The flame followed them, its light folding into the shard around his neck. As they rose toward the surface, Lysera looked at him, fear and awe in her gaze. "The first flame does not choose lightly," she said softly. "If it accepted you, the sea has already begun to change." Arion looked down, watching the trench fade into darkness below. "Then so be it," he said. "Let the sea remember something new." But deep beneath them, unseen, the eyes of Kalis opened once more. The mirror stirred, and this time it remembered him. The sea above Elendora had never known peace. Even in stillness, it carried a strange rhythm, a heartbeat that did not belong to the world of men. Arion and Lysera rose through the water in silence, guided by the faint golden glow of the shard that now pulsed with the fire of Erythra. The ocean seemed to part for them, bending away as though unwilling to touch the power he carried. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time had no meaning in the deep. Then, slowly, shapes began to emerge from the darkness. Towers, bridges, statues of beings with wings of stone and eyes hollowed by centuries. Elendora. But this was not the city Arion had seen in his visions. This was a graveyard of gods. The towers hung sideways, broken and overgrown with coral. Great domes lay cracked open like skulls. Ghostly schools of silver fish drifted through doorways that once held choirs. The spire of dawn, Elendora's highest tower, rose in the distance, tilted yet still impossibly bright. Lysera's voice was soft as she gazed upon it. The heart still beats. As they neared the spire, the shard's glow grew stronger, guiding them through a narrow archway into the tower's interior. The inside was vast, spiraling corridors of gold and crystal. The water shimmered as if filled with light rather than salt. Murals covered the walls, their images shifting faintly as though alive. Arian could see fragments of history in them. The creation of Elendora, the birth of the Sunborn. And the moment the mirror was forged, a circle of obsidian surrounded by chanting priests, with Kayla standing at its center. The spire was the throne of memory, Lysera said, her voice echoing through the halls. Every ruler of Elendora was crowned here. The Heartstone lies at its summit, or what remains of it. They began their ascent. The path wound upward in endless spirals, each step marked by faint whispers. Arian felt eyes on him, not hostile but sorrowful, like remnants of the city's soul watching its last descendants. At one point, he paused to touch a mural, and it moved. The gold lines beneath his fingers rippled, showing a vision of Elendora's final hour. The mirror cracked open like an eye, spilling darkness across the city. The sky turned to fire. Lysera's voice echoed from the memory. Seal it before it consumes us all. And then the vision vanished, leaving only stone and silence. Arian turned to Lysera. If the Heartstone was sealed here, what happened to it? It fractured, she said. When the mirror fell, the Heartstone broke into 7 shards. You carry one. The other sank with the city, hidden within its ruins. Without all 7, we cannot awaken its light. Only the mirror's darkness. They climbed higher until the staircase opened into a chamber filled with a dim, golden mist. In the center hovered a sphere of shattered crystal, the remains of the Heartstone's core. It pulsed faintly like a dying star. Around it, dozens of stone figures knelt in silent devotion, priests, guardians, and kings long turned to dust. Arian stepped forward, feeling a pull in his chest. The shard around his neck vibrated violently, glowing brighter than ever. The fragments of the Heartstone trembled in response, trying to reform but unable to complete the pattern. Lysera's eyes widened. It recognizes you. He raised his hand. The shard lifted from his chest and drifted toward the broken core. For a moment, the pieces began to join, a flicker of reunion, and then the chamber shuddered violently. The light faltered. Lysera shouted, "Stop!" Arian stumbled back as a shadow rippled through the water. From behind the Heartstone emerged a figure, human in shape but darker than the void. His face was familiar, though twisted by time and malice. Kalis, he smiled, the motion cold and effortless. Always reaching for what must remain broken, little sister? Lysera's voice trembled. You should not be here. Should? Kalis stepped forward, his body wreathed in black flame that did not burn the water. You sealed me once with this city's fall, but I learned patience in the dark. The mirror is awakening, and through it I am whole again. Arian's hand went to the mark on his wrist, which now burned fiercely. You used me, he said. The dreams, the shard, you led me here. Kalis tilted his head. Of course. The blood calls to its source. You are my echo, Arian Vale, my rebirth. Lysera raised her hand, summoning a spear of light. You will not take him. Kalis's laughter was like cracking stone. He was never yours to keep. He extended his hand, and the Heartstone pulsed violently. The water around them darkened, turning the gold mist into black storm. The statues of priests began to move, their eyes lighting with hollow blue fire. The Watchers are bound to me, Kalis said. Their souls were my offering. Did you think your light alone could rival the void? Lysera thrust her hand forward, releasing a wave of blinding energy. The Watchers dissolved, but Kalis stood unshaken. He raised his arm, and a surge of black magic struck them both. Arian was thrown against the wall, pain tearing through him. The mark on his wrist flared brighter, pushing back the darkness for a moment, the first flame burning within. Kalis hissed, momentarily shielding his eyes. So the flame chose you. How poetic. The same fire that destroyed our world now burns in my air. Arian forced himself to his feet. I'm not your heir. You carry my blood, Kalis said. The sea remembers us both. When the mirror opens, you and I will be one, the bridge restored. The dawn will drown in its own reflection. Before Arian could answer, Lysera shouted, Now! She struck her hands together, forming a sigil of pure light that wrapped around Kalis's body. The shadow screamed, twisting violently. The tower trembled, its walls cracking. "Go!" she cried. "Take the shard and run." "I'm not leaving you." "You must." The Heartstone's light exploded. For an instant, Kaelus's form shattered into smoke. Arion grabbed the shard, which had fallen to the floor, and felt its heat merge with the mark on his skin. The walls of the spire began to collapse, light and darkness swirling into chaos. He reached for Lysera, but the force between them pushed him away. A wave of power beyond control. The last thing he saw was her face, illuminated by both sorrow and fire, as the spire split in two and the sea consumed everything. Then, silence. When Arion awoke, he was no longer underwater. He lay upon black sand beneath a sky of burning clouds. The sea was gone, replaced by a vast desert of shattered shells and bones. In the distance, something gleamed. A great mirror, half buried, reflecting not the sky above but the world beneath. The mirror. Between worlds had risen. Arion stood upon the black sand, trembling. The sea that had once roared around Eilendora was gone, vanished into the horizon as if the ocean itself had been drained from existence. The silence was unbearable, vast and eternal, broken only by the whisper of distant winds that carried no sound. Above him, the sky burned crimson and gold, streaked with clouds shaped like forgotten gods. He turned toward the horizon. There it was, the mirror between worlds, a colossal disk of obsidian half buried in the ground. Its surface rippled like water, though no breeze touched it. The reflection it cast was wrong, inverted, darker, alive. The more he stared, the more it seemed to breathe. Arion took a step closer. His boots sank into the ash and the mark on his wrist pulsed faintly, responding to the mirror's call. Each heartbeat made the world tremble slightly, as if his blood and the mirror's essence were linked. He whispered, "Lysera?" But his voice vanished into the emptiness. Only silence answered. He tried to recall the last thing he saw, her face, her light, the collapse of the spire. And the moment her voice faded into the roar of the sea. Now everything was still. He was alone, but then, something shifted. The air around him thickened. A faint hum, deep and resonant, rose from the mirror. Arion watched as the reflection within its black surface began to move. A figure standing exactly where he was, mirroring every motion. But when he raised his hand, the reflection hesitated, and a faint, cold smile spread across its lips. It was not his reflection. The air grew colder. The ground beneath his feet cracked, bleeding thin trails of blue light. The reflection spoke, its voice echoing both inside and outside his head. "You cannot run from what you are, Arion." Arion stumbled back. "Who are you?" "I am the part of you that was promised. The blood of Kaelus, the heir of the void. You carry his mark, his flame, both bound in one vessel. You are the bridge." He shook his head violently. "No, I am not him." The reflection's smile deepened. "Then why does the mirror open for you alone?" Arion turned away, heart pounding, but the world around him was already changing. The black desert began to ripple like water, and pillars of light burst from the ground, forming arches of crystal that rose high into the sky. Shapes moved within the glow. Spirits of Eilendora, twisted and beautiful, their eyes empty yet full of longing. He heard their whispers, countless voices merging into one lament. Return the heart. Restore the sun. Awaken what was lost. Arion clutched the shard hanging around his neck. Its light flickered faintly, as if struggling to breathe. He felt the pull again. The same force that had led him beneath the sea, the same call that haunted his dreams. The mirror pulsed in response. He knew somehow that it was opening. A gust of wind swept across the plain, carrying with it a cascade of ash and memories. He saw fragments of another world, Eilendora in its golden age. Towers shining beneath a blue sun, people laughing in streets of marble. Lysera standing before the Heartstone, her hands outstretched toward a younger version of himself. Or perhaps of Kaelus. Then everything shattered. The vision dissolved into darkness. When Arion opened his eyes again, he was standing at the edge of the mirror itself. Its surface no longer reflected the world. It revealed another one beneath it. A city made of shadows and light, the ghostly twin of Eilendora. And standing within that city was her Lysera. He saw her face through the mirror's surface, pale and distant. She was alive but trapped within the reflection. Her lips moved silently, speaking words he could not hear. Arian stepped closer, pressing his hand against the surface. It was cold, smoother than glass, yet it seemed to bend slightly beneath his touch. "Lysera," he called. "Can you hear me?" No answer. Only a faint shimmer of light pulsed from her heart to his, echoing through the mirror. Then the shadow beside her began to move, tall, elegant, wreathed in the same black flame that had consumed the spire. Kalis. His voice rippled through the air, carried by the mirror's hum. "You see now, my son. 2 worlds, 1 fate. She belongs to the light as you belong to me. But the mirror demands balance, and balance will be restored." Arian clenched his fists. "You destroyed everything. Elendora, the gods, even your own sister." Kalis' smile was timeless and cruel. "Creation and destruction are the same breath. The gods built this world from the void. I merely give it back." He reached forward from within the mirror, his hand extending through the glass-like surface. The black flame spread outward, forming cracks in reality itself. The ground beneath Arian's feet began to sink, turning liquid, swallowing the desert. Arian backed away, but the pull was irresistible. The shard around his neck glowed brighter, resonating with the mark on his wrist. For a heartbeat, both lights merged, gold and black, life and death, and the world split open. He was falling again. Down through endless corridors of light and shadow, through memories not his own, the creation of Elendora, the forging of the Heartstone, the first fire born from the void. He saw Kalis as he once was, a scholar of light not yet corrupted. He saw Lysera beside him, and the 2 of them building a world meant to last forever. Then came the temptation, a whisper from the abyss, promising eternity beyond death. Kalis reached for it. Lysera begged him to stop. The Heartstone fractured. The sea roared. Elendora burned. And now Arian understood. He was not Kalis reborn. He was the vessel meant to end him. The first flame within him was the counter to the void, a spark left behind by the gods themselves to restore balance should the mirror ever awaken. When he opened his eyes again, he stood inside the mirror's world in the reflection realm. The sky was inverted, the towers of Elendora gleaming silver instead of gold, their beauty terrifying in its perfection. Shadows walked among them like people, each whispering fragments of the same prayer. At the center of the city, Lysera knelt before a shattered altar, her light dimming. Kalis stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Arian's voice was quiet but unyielding. "This ends here." Kalis turned, his eyes glowing like dying suns. "Then come, bridge of flame, let us finish what the gods began." The mirror cracked above them, thunder rolled through the sky, and Elendora's reflection trembled on the edge of oblivion. The war for the soul of both worlds had begun. The mirror realm quaked like a living being in pain. Silver towers bent as though under invisible pressure, and the air itself cracked like shattered glass. Arian could feel the pulse of 2 worlds colliding, reality and reflection bleeding into one another. The line between them was dissolving. At the city's center, the sky burned white. Kalis stood amidst the ruin, his shadow stretching across streets that once shimmered with divine light. Lysera knelt at the base of the broken altar, her strength fading, her magic bleeding into the mirror's heart. Arian felt the pull from both sides, Kalis' darkness calling his blood, and Lysera's fading light calling his soul. The mark on Arian's wrist glowed fiercely, gold fire threading through his veins. He raised his hand and the first flame flared to life, forming a burning circle around him. The heat didn't hurt. It felt ancient, familiar, like the heartbeat of creation itself. Kalis watched him with quiet curiosity. "So the gods left their spark after all," he said, his tone half amusement, half disdain. "Do you even know what it is you wield, child?" Arian's voice trembled, but his resolve was iron. "The fire that can burn gods." Kalis smiled faintly. "And yet you think to burn me with it?" He lifted his arm. Instantly the city responded. The silver towers twisted into spears of darkness that launched toward Arian. The ground cracked open beneath his feet, releasing torrents of shadow. Arian dodged left, summoning the flame's energy to form a shield of light. The spears shattered against it, each impact shaking the very air. Lysera raised her head weakly. "Arian, the flame cannot fight him alone. You must bind it to the heart." Arian turned, and saw behind her the same altar he had glimpsed in his dreams, half broken, half glowing. At its center was a faintly beating crystal, a shard of the heartstone flickering like a dying star. He dashed forward, but Kalis appeared before him in a blur, his black cloak moving like smoke. He struck with a hand of pure void, hurling Arian across the square. Arian crashed into a wall, the impact shaking through his bones. Kalis's voice was calm, too calm. "I was the first to dream of Elendora. The gods gave me light, but they feared my ambition. They made the heartstone to bind me. Now I will make a new world, a mirror without their lies." Arian spat blood, forcing himself to stand. "You destroyed everything because of pride, because of truth," Kalis thundered, his power shaking the ground. "The gods were never creators. They were thieves. They stole fire from the abyss and called it light. I only seek to return what they took." For a moment, silence hung between them, the silence of revelation. Arian understood now. The gods' light and Kalis's void were the same source, two sides of a stolen power. The mirror wasn't evil. It was the balance they had broken. But Kalis's desire for control had twisted that balance into corruption. The mirror's edges began to fracture, revealing glimpses of the real world beyond, Elendora's ruins beneath the sea. Through the cracks, Arian saw flashes of what was happening outside. The waters trembling, the spire collapsing again, the deep sea glowing as if ready to ignite. Both worlds were unraveling. Kalis stretched his arms. "Let it fall. The mirror will birth a new reality from the ruins of both." Arian gritted his teeth and raised the flame again. "Not while I still breathe." They collided in a storm of light and darkness. Every strike tore through the air like thunder. The ground cracked open, exposing rivers of molten shadow. The flames from Arian's hands clashed against Kalis's void, each blow sending shockwaves that splintered the sky. Lysra struggled to her feet, whispering ancient words. The shard of the heartstone responded, glowing brighter. "Arian, the heart calls to your flame, unite them." Arian's eyes widened. The first flame wasn't just a weapon, it was a key. He closed his eyes, focusing inward. The fire inside him roared, but beneath its fury he felt something deeper. Warmth, memory, sorrow. The voices of Elendora's people, the pulse of 1,000 souls waiting for release. He raised both hands and let the flame flow through him, not as fire, but as light. It streamed into the heartstone shard, which flared to life with golden brilliance. For a moment the world seemed to freeze. The shadow stopped moving. Kalis hesitated. Lysra whispered, "Now, brother, remember what you once were." But Kalis only roared, his power exploding outward. "I remember everything." The black energy surged, colliding with the golden light. The impact split the sky. Towers fell like rain. The mirror city began to dissolve, each reflection melting into streaks of light and shadow. Arian felt himself being pulled into the storm, two powers tearing at his body, fighting for his soul. The mark on his wrist burned with unbearable intensity. His vision blurred. He could feel Kalis's essence inside him trying to merge, to make him one with the void. Then through the chaos he heard Lysra's voice, soft, trembling, but clear. "Arian, don't fight the darkness. Balance it." Her words pierced the storm. He remembered the murals, the stories, the god's silence, and the truth that light alone could never survive. The world needed both. He stopped resisting. He opened himself to both the flame and the void. The two forces collided inside him, a searing, shattering explosion of pain and power. For a moment he thought he would die, but then he didn't. The agony turned to warmth, then to stillness. When he opened his eyes, Kalis stood frozen before him. The black fire around him was fading, replaced by light. For the first time, his expression was not anger, but peace. He looked at Arian and whispered almost gently, "So the cycle ends." And then he dissolved into 1,000 fragments of silver light, vanishing into the sky. The mirror shattered. The city around them broke apart, each reflection dissolving into mist. Lysra ran to Arian, her hands trembling. "You did it. You restored the balance." But Arian could feel his strength fading. The mark on his wrist was dimming, and the world around him was becoming transparent. He smiled faintly. "If both worlds are to live, Unbridge must fall." Lysra shook her head. "No." He reached out, touching her face. "You'll rebuild Elendora, not with gold or magic, but with memory. Tell them we were here. Light began to consume him, spreading from the mark across his skin. The last thing he saw was Lacera's tearful smile as the mirror's pieces rose into the air, becoming stars. And then, silence. The storm ceased. The reflection was gone. Only the true sea remained, calm and endless, covering the ruins of Elendora. In its depths, where once stood towers of gold, a single flame flickered, neither dark nor bright, but balanced, eternal. The first sound Lysera heard was the sigh of the sea. It was soft and rhythmic, like the breath of something reborn. When she opened her eyes, light surrounded her, not the blinding gold of Elendora's ancient glory, but the gentle dawn of a new world. She lay upon a shore that shimmered like glass, the waves rolling with quiet grace. The ruins of the city she once called home now rested beneath the water, their reflections visible through the crystal surface, not as ghosts, but as memories. The air was warm, peaceful, alive. For the first time in 1,000 years, the sea was still. Lysera sat up slowly. Her body felt weightless, her mind drifting between exhaustion and clarity. The last thing she remembered was Arian, the fire in his eyes, the storm of light and shadow, and his final smile before the world broke apart. Now he was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his promise. She touched the sand beside her and found a faint glow, the mark of the first flame, carved into the shore like a symbol left by the tide. It pulsed once, then faded, leaving behind warmth. Lysera whispered, "You kept your word, Arian Vale." Above her, the sky was no longer crimson or gold, but a gentle blue, scattered with soft clouds. Birds, real living creatures, flew across the horizon, singing songs that had not been heard since before the fall. The world had healed, but she knew that peace was not the same as forgetfulness. Elendora's story could not end with silence. It had to be remembered, truthfully, not as myth or glory, but as the tale of a people who had reached too far and found redemption in the ashes. She rose and began to walk along the shore. Each step left faint light in her footprints, the remnant of divine blood still within her veins. In the distance, where the sea met the horizon, she saw land, faint green hills and forests untouched by the old world's curse. A new land, a new beginning. Lysera began her journey toward it, carrying nothing but the memory of light and darkness in balance. Along the way, she found fragments of what once was, a golden mask half buried in sand, a crystal feather, a single petal from Elendora's sacred tree. She gathered them gently, whispering old names as if giving thanks. At sunset, she reached the edge of a forest. The trees there were tall and strange, their leaves glowing faintly as if the first flame's breath had reached them too. She followed a narrow path until she came upon a small clearing, where a shallow pool reflected the evening light. She knelt beside it and gasped. In the water's reflection, she saw him, Arian, not as he was before. Not flesh and blood, but a shimmer of light shaped like him, smiling softly. "Lysera," the reflection said, voice like the wind through leaves. "The balance holds. The mirror sleeps. The flame is free." Tears filled her eyes. "You survived?" His smile deepened, sorrowful and serene. "Not in the way you remember. My form is gone, but my spirit remains, like a guardian between worlds. As long as the sea remembers Elendora, I will be its light." Lysera reached toward the water, her fingers trembling. "You don't have to fade. I can find a way." "No," he interrupted gently. "You are the way. You are the memory. The world needs your story more than my return." She lowered her hand, her voice breaking. "And what if I forget?" "You won't," he said. "Every dawn will remind you. Every tide will whisper my name." The reflection began to fade, his form dissolving into ripples of light. "Farewell, Lysera. Build the world we dreamed of. Not of gold, but of truth." And then he was gone. Lysera bowed her head, her tears falling into the water. The pool shimmered, and for a brief moment the reflection of Elendora's towers appeared, whole, golden, at peace. Then they too vanished, leaving only the forest and the stars. That night, Lysera lit a small fire using driftwood and her own spark of magic. The flame burned steady and warm, neither bright nor dim, perfectly balanced. She sat beside it and began to speak softly to the night, her voice carrying across the trees and waves. "This is the tale of Elendora," she whispered. "The city of dawn, born from the dream of gods and broken by their silence. The city that drowned and rose again through love and sacrifice. Let no one forget its truth, that even in ruin there can be balance." Her words became the first legend of the new world. Generations passed. The sea reclaimed what was lost, but it no longer hid its secrets with malice. Sailors who ventured far into its depths sometimes saw glimmers of gold beneath the waves, not ruins but memories. They spoke of a woman who walked upon the shore, eyes like starlight, whispering to the tide. Some called her the keeper of dawn, others said she was a goddess. But among those who listened carefully to the wind and the water, a different tale was told, that she was not divine at all, but human. The last heir of Elendora, the one who carried both light and darkness, who remembered the balance that had saved the world. And somewhere in the deep ocean, beyond the reach of men, a faint light still burned, a single ember that refused to die, watching over the sea from within the depths, the last remnant of Aryan Vale, the bridge between worlds, the flame eternal. Centuries passed like waves in the sea, each one erasing a little more of what had been, yet carrying whispers of what must come again. The world above had changed. New kingdoms rose upon the bones of the old, speaking languages unknown to the gods. The memory of Elendora had faded into myth, told only by poets and dreamers who claimed that beneath the ocean lay a sleeping city of gold. But in the far south, on an island shrouded in mist, the legend endured. They called it Oral's Reach, a place where dawn lingered longer than anywhere else, and where, on rare nights, the sea itself glowed faintly as though remembering something divine. In a quiet monastery built upon the cliffs, children of the dawn kept the old stories alive. They were known as the Order of the Flame-Bearers, guardians of balance, protectors of memory. None remembered when the order began, but every master who led it carried a single mark, a faint golden scar upon the wrist. And now, that mark had appeared again. Her name was Aria, a young acolyte barely 16, who had never seen the wider world beyond the island's shores. She was curious, restless, and too bold for her teacher's liking. The mark had appeared on her wrist one morning, glowing faintly as she awoke from a dream of fire and water, of a man with eyes like the sun, and a woman whose voice echoed through the tide. That night, she found herself standing alone by the cliffs, staring at the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, silent and dark. And yet beneath the surface something shimmered faintly, not a reflection but a pulse. Aria whispered, "What are you?" The sea did not answer in words, but a voice, soft and ancient, brushed against her thoughts. "The bridge awakens," she gasped, stumbling backward. Her mark burned like a brand. The wind howled suddenly, carrying with it a low hum that seemed to rise from the deep. For a heartbeat she saw visions. Towers beneath the waves, a shattered mirror, and two figures standing hand in hand at the edge of creation. Then it was gone. By dawn, the sea was calm again. But Aria knew something had changed. In the temple archives, she searched feverishly through scrolls and relics, seeking anything that spoke of her mark or the dream. Days passed before she found it. A fragment of parchment so old its ink had nearly faded. It spoke of Lizera the Keeper, last of the Dawnbloods who sealed the abyss and watched over the world until the flame returned in mortal form. A prophecy, written in golden ink. When the sea remembers its heart, and the stars reflect beneath the waves, the flame shall awaken once more, not to burn but to balance. Through mortal hands, the bridge shall rise again. Aria traced the words with trembling fingers. She didn't fully understand them, but something deep inside her stirred. Recognition, perhaps, or fate. She went to the monastery's elder, Master Corin, an old man whose eyes held more wisdom than time should allow. When she showed him her mark, his face grew pale. "This should not be," he whispered. "The flame ended with Elendora. The mirror sleeps. Then why does it call to me?" she asked. He looked toward the sea, his expression grave. "Because perhaps it is no longer sleeping." That night the island trembled. The sea glowed again, not softly but fiercely, a line of light stretching far into the horizon. The sky above turned silver, the stars bending into strange constellations. Aria ran to the cliffs, her heart racing. The mark on her wrist was burning now, its light dancing with the rhythm of the waves. From the depths below, a faint sound rose, the echo of a heartbeat, slow and thunderous. And then from the water emerged a shape. At first, she thought it was an illusion, a mirage of moonlight. But as the glow strengthened, she saw it clearly, a great spire of glass and gold, rising from beneath the waves, crowned with a single, unbroken flame, Elendora. The city had returned. Arya fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. The prophecy, it's real. As the tower continued to rise, a figure appeared within the flame, not solid, but light itself shaped into human form. A voice, calm and deep, filled the air around her. Child of balance, it said. The world turns again. The void stirs beneath the sea. The mirror cracks anew. Arya stared, awestruck. Who are you? I am the bridge that once fell, said the voice. I am Aryan Vale, her breath caught. You're the flame. I am what remains of it, the light replied. The gods' lie still festers. Their silence has returned. A shadow moves beneath the new world, one born not of void but of forgetfulness. And only memory can save it. The flame dimmed as if fading with each word. Seek the keeper's legacy, Aryan said.
Find Lysera's song.
The balance must be born anew, or all worlds shall drown again. Then the flame vanished, and with it the spire began to sink. Arya reached out desperately, shouting into the wind. Wait! How do I find her? What do I do? But the sea gave no answer. The light faded. The horizon went dark once more. Only the waves remained, calm, endless, and silent. She fell to the ground, clutching her wrist, feeling the pulse of the mark beneath her skin. In her heart she knew the truth. The flame had chosen her. The prophecy had begun. Far below the waves, unseen by mortal eyes, the mirror between worlds quivered. Cracks of light spread across its surface like veins, and within its depths, something ancient stirred. Not Kalis, not God, but the forgotten echo of creation itself. The world of balance was awakening once more, and the dawn that followed would not be gentle. The sea was no longer silent. For days it rumbled like a living thing, waves rising higher than the monastery walls, winds howling with ancient grief. The Order of the Flamebearers watched in awe and terror as the ocean churned with golden light, as if the dawn itself were trapped beneath the water, struggling to be born. Arya knew what it meant. The prophecy had begun its final verse. Master Corrin had tried to stop her, but the mark on her wrist had already chosen her path. She felt it every time she closed her eyes, a pull, deep and insistent, dragging her toward the horizon where the sea and sky met in blinding brilliance. The voice of Aryan Vale still echoed in her dreams. Seek the keeper's legacy, find Lysera's song. And so, on the morning of the seventh tide, Arya left Oral's reach. She carried no weapons, no compass. Only the pendant of the flamebearers around her neck and a shard of golden glass she had found washed upon the shore, still warm to the touch. The fisherman watched as she stepped into a small wooden boat. You'll be lost out there, one warned. Perhaps, she said softly, but so was the first dawn, until someone remembered to call it back. The boat drifted into the mist. The journey lasted 3 days. The sea grew strange as she sailed farther from land. The water darkened to ink, and the sky turned pale and silver as though she were sailing through the reflection of another world. She saw lights beneath the surface, spirals, runes, vast shapes moving slowly through the deep. Once, in the middle of the night, she heard singing. It was faint at first, a whisper carried by the wind, but it grew clearer with every hour. A woman's voice, haunting and tender, echoing from beneath the waves. Arya leaned over the edge of the boat and whispered, Lysera. The sea answered with light. The water beneath her glowed, forming a path of shimmering gold. The mark on her wrist flared, and before she could think, the boat began to descend, slowly sinking but without fear or pain. The air turned to light. The sea opened like a gate. She found herself standing upon a floor of crystal, surrounded by towering columns of gold and glass. Elendora, reborn beneath the waves. The city pulsed with quiet life. Schools of luminous fish swam through arches of marble. Great orbs of flame floated above empty streets, burning without smoke. In the center stood a single tower, tall, perfect, crowned with a flame that flickered between red and white. Arya approached it slowly. At the base of the tower was an ancient door, carved with two names intertwined in runes, Arian and Lysera. The shard she carried began to hum, resonating with the mark on her wrist. She pressed both against the door, and it opened. Inside was a chamber bathed in golden light, and there, upon a dais of stone, lay a woman, motionless, serene, her hair flowing like silver silk, her hands crossed upon her chest. Lysera, the Keeper of Dawn. Arya's heart ached as she knelt beside her. Even after centuries, Lysera's form had not decayed. She seemed asleep, untouched by time. Around her body, the air shimmered with faint energy, the last remnant of the first flame. Arya whispered, "You saved the world once. Now it needs you again." Her mark pulsed brighter. The flame above the dais flickered weakly as if hearing her, and then, a voice, not aloud but within her mind. Soft, ancient, filled with both sorrow and peace. Child of balance. "The bridge is open once more, Lysera. Yes, my time has long passed, but the flame endures. You are its new vessel." Arya bowed her head, trembling. "I don't understand how. I'm no hero. I'm just me." The voice was gentle. "So was I once. The flame does not choose the strongest. It chooses the one who listens." The ground trembled suddenly, a deep roar shaking the walls. Cracks of darkness spread through the golden floor. "It has begun," Lysera said. "The void remembers its hunger." From the cracks, shadows rose, shapeless things made of memory and grief. They hissed like broken wind, forming faces that flickered and vanished. They were not alive. They were what the world had forgotten. Arya felt terror, but also clarity. "Tell me what to do." Lysera's voice was calm. "You must rekindle the balance. The flame must burn within you, not upon this altar. It is no longer a relic, it must become life again." "How?" "Through truth, through choice, through memory." The dais glowed brighter. A beam of light struck Arya's chest, filling her body with warmth so fierce she could barely breathe. The mark on her wrist spread across her arm like fire, and the shard in her hand melted into her skin, becoming light. She screamed, not from pain, but from the weight of what she felt. 1,000 voices. 1,000 lives. The echo of Elendora, the sorrow of the gods, the love of Lysera and Arian. The flame had chosen its bearer. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing at the heart of the storm. The shadows lunged toward her, but each step she took burned them away. Her body glowed like a living sun, her hair floating in waves of gold. She raised her hand toward the ceiling, and her voice, in clear, steady, unafraid, filled the chamber. "I am Arya of the Dawn. I carry the memory of light and shadow. I am the bridge, not of gods, but of humankind. The world shall not drown again." The flame exploded upward. Light rippled through the ocean, through the sky, through every corner of the living world. The cracks sealed. The shadows dissolved into mist. Above the waves, the sea turned to glass, and a single column of golden fire reached into the heavens. For a brief, perfect moment, the old and new worlds touched, Elendora's towers shining through the depths, reflected in the clouds above, and then silence. When Arya awoke, she was back upon the shore of Oral's Reach. The sea was calm, the dawn was bright. Around her, the sand shimmered faintly with gold, not from ruin, but from rebirth. Master Corrin stood nearby, tears in his eyes. "The sea, it's alive again," he whispered. Arya smiled faintly. "No," she said softly. "It remembers." Above them, the sunrise stretched across the horizon. Not red, not gold, but pure white. The flame eternal burned not in the sky, but within her heart, and from that day forward, every dawn began with the same light. Soft, balanced, eternal. The light of the bridge reborn. The age of gods had ended. The age of memory had begun.